It's time to follow the money with your hosts, Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard.
Here we go. Thanks for checking in today. Mitch, Paul, Matt Humans as well. Matt's back in the VSiN studio at the South Point Sportsbook. We'll have a UFC guest coming up in about 5 minutes. 2:49 coming up on Saturday night. I'm excited. I can't wait to watch it. Going to get it here. I'm in Wisconsin right now. Going to get it on Saturday night. And guys, it's a great card, by the way, like top to bottom. A lot of really good fights. And I'll tell you this. I heard Matthew Holt on yesterday with JVT and Danny Burke. And at the time, the Cerrone Pettis round prop was 2.5 under plus money. Holt made a great case for the under 2.5 because he thinks Cerrone is completely finished. He's lost 3 straight fights in the first round via knockout. And Pettis has lost four of his 5 losses. Last 5 losses have been in the first round. He thinks Cerrone is shot. And this number has moved big time now. Under 2.5 rounds is minus 140. I'm looking at that. Seems to be like a consensus now in this fight.
I kind of like that bet as well because I don't think these guys are going to go deep into the fight. It's not going to be a cardio type of fight. You know, whoever's got the better conditioning is going to win in the later rounds. Paul, I think there's a chance both these guys are shot, Cowboy and Pettis. And they might just start throwing bombs, and you could see a knockout pretty early.
Very good. Excellent job by these books to put up index props and winning method. I know Circa's got a couple fights that are already listed on the app about, I think, like Cruz. Cruz is 35-1 to win in round 1. I mean, that's great stuff. The other thing, Cerrone might know it too, Matt, because he came out and said he wants to fight 3 or 4 times in May. He wants to fight on every card. So maybe he knows it. I better get, this could be it for me. I better get a couple paydays before it's over. The other thing, I want to address this. And William Hill started this, I think it was on the McGregor card, and they did it on the Brazil card right when the pandemic hit. William Hill is going to do in-play for this on Saturday. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, and I want to talk to a UFC guy. Are there situations where it's advantageous for bettors to play this in-play? Like if you got a heavyweight fight, and like Ngannou's a $3 favorite and he wins round 1. Should you then come back on the dog and say, what do you think can happen? The guy could get knocked out in round 2, and you could take a juicy price. Or you can just see going in, let's say a favorite's maybe $2, and you think, oh boy, it's a bad matchup. And then you watch round 1, and exactly how you handicap the fight, it happened in the first round. You say, okay, well, I'll lay $3 now or $3.50 here in play. I mean, it's something. And the other thing, these judges are squirrely. What does Dana White always say? Never let it go to the scorecards. I mean, who knows? Maybe someone, since it's 2-0 for one fighter, and actually it's competitive, and you think Rogan, whoever's on the call, is getting it wrong, or they just put up a bad number. And maybe it's not 2-0 after 2 rounds, and it's a competitive fight, and a guy could knock him out or steal the 3rd round or whatever. Because we see judges blow it all the time. That's something to kick around. Sure, yeah, that's something to kick around about. Maybe there's some advantages here and opportunities with UFC in play.
I think that's a pretty good point.
Matt, do you recall Lou Finocchiaro, who does the UFC write-ups and Point Spread Weekly? I believe it was going back to last week. I think he grabbed Gaethje plus 165, if my memory serves me right on this one.
You are correct about that. By the way, in VSiN's Point Spread Weekly magazine, which is going to be out today, Dana White's on the cover. Lou Finicchiaro's got in-depth breakdowns on all 12 fights on the card, and he does have Gaethje in his pocket at plus 165.
All right, welcome into the program today. This is Follow the Money here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Mitch Moss, Paulie Howard, and Matt Humans. And I'm seeing right now, it looks like Ferguson down to $1.70 favorite in that fight. Gaethje is plus 150, and we are joined right now by Jordan Sherwood to talk about UFC 249, host of the main event on ESPN West Palm. Jordan, good morning. Thanks for the time today. Where are you at right now with this Ferguson fight against Gaethje and the betting number? He was a bigger favorite a couple of weeks back, and as we just talked about, 165 was available on Gaethje, but he's now down to plus 150. Your thoughts here between these two fighters?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing some movement on Gaethje because of what's been coming out about Ferguson and his fighting style. He takes a lot of damage to inflict a lot of damage. He's never fought a power puncher like Justin Gaethje. So I think people now are looking at that, plus the fact that Gaethje's had 4.5 weeks to prepare for this fight, as opposed to when he was going to originally take this fight on short notice on April 16th. That's why you're seeing a lot more action come in on Justin Gaethje. I still don't buy it. Tony Ferguson, to me, is an elite level fighter. He's the one guy I think in the division that could cause problems for Khabib Nurmagomedov. And if you look at the record and the opposition between the two, the type of style fighter that Tony Ferguson is, Justin Gaethje has struggled with. Pressure fighters that can take a lot of damage. His two losses in the UFC are to Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. Those are two guys that take a lot of damage, to inflict a lot of damage, and are cardio machines. And Tony Ferguson is at another level when it comes to all that. So I still think at Ferguson at $1.77 right now, there's tremendous value there because of the streak he's on, the type of fighter he is, the mentality he has. I mean, the dude cut weight to a fight that he wasn't having. I mean, he's just another type of fighter. It's crazy. During a pandemic, he's cutting weight for really no reason other than to just cut weight. So I still like Ferguson at value.
That number you might be able to find a cheaper number on that too by the time the fight goes off Saturday night, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the type of fight that we're looking at. There's going to be a lot of money on this fight card in general. And I think Justin Gaethje, because he's known as the highlight, is the guy that bat flips off the cage. He's a knockout artist. He's coming off of 2 or 3 straight first round finishes. So I think there's going to be still a lot more play on him, which in turn, for me, sees a lot more value in Tony Ferguson.
If you're watching on vsin.com, that is not Mitchell Trubisky down there. That's Jordan Sherwood.
Thank God for that. That was a great day when they decided not to pick up that 5th-year option. I celebrated as best I could. I mean, you don't pay $25 million for a backup quarterback, do you?
Yeah. Sounds like a Foles fan. I'm with you. I think Foles should be the guy. How about Ngannou, who's a 280 favorite? His opponent's never lost, and he's coming off a win against Overeem. The round prop also was over under 1.5 rounds. How do you see that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're an Ngannou backer, you got to look for the early finish. If you think of big boy Rosenstruck, you're going to go past that. Here's the thing that I'm hearing about Francis Ngannou. If you're a backer for him and you think he's going to win the fight, insiders tell me to win this fight, Francis Ngannou is going to have to take Rosenstruck down. Rosenstruck is a better striker, renowned kickboxer, 78, 80 kickboxing fights in his combat sports career. That bothers me when I hear that a heavyweight is intimidating, a knockout artist like Ngannou. To win a fight, he's going to have to wrestle, grapple, and take a guy down. Mm-hmm. I think there's tremendous value in Rosenstruck. I think people don't know him. They look in Ngannou. And they also might look at the fact that he needed a miracle 5th-round knockout to stop Alistair Overeem in his last fight. But don't get it wrong. Rosenstruck is a much better striker than Francis Ngannou. So right now, I'm looking at it, I think Rosenstruck is the play here. He's a live dog for sure.
Oh, excellent.
Plus
okay.
225.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what do we do with Cruz, who hasn't fought since December of 2016? And Cejudo's a 220 favorite, and that round prop is 4.5 over minus 190.
Yeah, I think you still got to take the over on this one. Despite the fact that Cruz has not fought in 3.5 years, he's 35 years old. He's a guy that has never been finished outside of his only loss to Uriah Faber way back in the WEC days. And despite the layoff, this guy like a Tony Ferguson is just another type of athlete. He's recovered from injury before. He's had an ACL. He's had a shoulder. He's had a groin. And yet he comes back and he comes back in some dominating fashion. It's going to be a difficult matchup for Cejudo. He's never fought a guy with that type of footwork, that type of style. And you might argue that TJ Dillashaw is that, but Cruz is on another level than TJ Dillashaw. So I certainly think even at $2, the over is the play. I think there's also value in Cruz as an underdog. People will just look past him, snub their toe at their nose at him because of the layoff and because Cejudo's on an unbelievable streak. I mean, defeating Demetrius Johnson, knocking out Marlon Moraes, with his victory over Dillashaw. But it's going to be hard for Cejudo to implement his game plan of takedowns, the Olympic-style wrestler. So I certainly think there's value in Cruz as a dog as well.
Okay, and I know you like. I know you like the over, but as I mentioned earlier, at Circa, Cruz to win in round 1 or round 2 is 30 and 35 to 1. Jordan, how do fans feel about Greg Hardy?
Yeah, I think most of the fans that I talk to are still not a believer, are still not a fan. They look at this guy's, history, and I don't blame him. I mean, the dude has a terrible history. He's got, a lot of violations, a lot of people that rub people the wrong way. But insiders, people that are very tight with Greg Hardy, like at American Top Team and other people that he's been training with, women that he's been training with, he's humble. He's there to learn. He's there to get his ass kicked every day in the gym to finally get out. But I think people don't know that story. They know the story about his NFL career, and then they know about the inhaler and the illegal kick that he threw in his first fight. So he is certainly a raw talent. He certainly is going to have to, storm the Castro and overwhelm him early with athleticism. He'll have an 8-inch reach advantage in this fight, which is very intriguing. The Castro's a counter striker. It's going to be very hard for him he's going to probably have to eat one to give one. And against a guy like Greg Hardy, that might not be a good recipe for success.
How would you play a fight like that? Because Hardy is minus 200, and if you wanted to play him to win by knockout, you get plus 140 on that. How do you think that fight would end? It seems to me that's probably going to be Hardy by knockout.
Yeah, I mean, if you're backing Greg Hardy, I think you think he's going to win the fight via knockout. But don't get Jorgen De Castro wrong. I mean, this guy's also was a big time prospect. He had a nice walk-off knockout win in his UFC debut. So certainly he's a guy that has around the same experience, but didn't have to transition from another sport, obviously like Greg Hardy, to mixed martial arts. So I think definitely the unders in play for sure. Greg Hardy by knockout, but I also would not be surprised if De Castro had his hand raised. I also believe that he could be a live dog come Saturday night.
Okay.
Follow the money here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We are talking to Jordan Sherwood, host of the main event on ESPN West Palm. And before we got you on, Jordan, we were talking about the Cerrone-Pettis fight. And we all think that there's a good chance that Cerrone is shot. He's lost his last 3 fights by KO, in the first round. Pettis, by the way, pretty much the same thing in 4 of his last 5 losses. He goes down early in his fights. And the round prop was 2.5 under plus money. It has shifted to minus 140, but we're still thinking that how does this go over 2.5 rounds?
Yeah, I don't see it either. I think a combination between Donald Cowboy Cerrone being a little bit long in the tooth, Anthony Pettis, the style matchup that he presents. I don't think we're going to see anything different than what we saw these first time these guys fought, 7-8 years ago. Liver shot ended it early for Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Pettis had his hand raised. I think I was hearing you guys talk earlier. I'd rather be interested in the bet of does Donald Cowboy Cerrone fight more than once in 10 days? Is he really going to stay in his Winnebago and try to get another fight in Wednesday or Saturday? Pettis, certainly value there, $1.40, $1.36. Pettis by just looking at your odds right now. Pettis by KO at $2.75. Grab that immediately, absolutely immediately. Pettis is not going to submit this guy. He's going to win, and he's going to probably knock him out and stop him. So yeah, grab that for sure. Love that. I'm going to go grab that right now.
That was Pettis. You said you're going to grab that right now. Are you talking about Pettis by submission? The sound was breaking up a little bit.
Oh, no. Pettis by TKO.
Okay.
At near 3-1.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
How about an early look at
I got excited there, guys. What are you going to do?
No problem. No, it was not so. How about an early look at the fight night on Wednesday, as Rothwell is a dog against St. Preux, but St. Proux's moving up 30 pounds in weight.
Yeah, I love Big Ben in that fight. I think that he's an underrated athlete for sure at heavyweight. Oben St. Preux has become a little chinny in his last couple of fights, and I definitely respect his athleticism. But jumping up in weight, he's not the type of guy that strikes me as doing well going up in weight to fight the bigger guys, the heavier guys. So I like Rothwell for sure in that fight.
All right, this is a 12-fight card. It's a really good card. UFC 249. Been waiting a long time for it. Jordan, the high-profile fights aren't always the best bets. What would you rank as your best bets on this card?
Yeah, well, like I told you earlier, Rosenstruck as the dog. I love his kickboxing background. He's not going to be intimidated by the striker that Ngannou is, and at that value, I certainly think you want to grab that. I'm also extremely surprised that Jacare, you see there, as the pay-per-view opener, is as low as a favorite as he is against Uriah Hall. I think people are looking at, Souza, Jacare has been knocked out a few times, but this fight goes to the ground. It's over. Uriah Hall gets taken down all the time. So I definitely think Jacare is tremendous value there. Plus, if you could grab him via submission, I'm sure it's some plus money there. I would look at that. And I also love Bryce Mitchell. I think that Charles Hossa is getting a little bit of love because he was impressive in his hometown of Boston the last time he fought after a long layoff. But Bryce Mitchell is a huge, big-time prospect. Too big, too athletic, too strong for Hossa in that fight. So I think those are the three that I would suggest looking at for UFC 249.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Last thing for you, Jordan. A lot of times with these fight cards, you don't know how it's going to shake out, but sometimes it'll look like from top to bottom it's maybe the best card in history, and it's kind of a dud. And then other times you'll have kind of just a throwaway card, and it's amazing. This one on paper, anyway, top to bottom appears to be, and again, who knows what's going to happen, but it appears to be like a really terrific card coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm obviously, I think we're all pining for live sports. I think we all want it. So the UFC tried to do their best job of putting together a great card. And yes, you're right. Stylistically, this fight card top to bottom is very interesting. I mean, even further down the card, Nico Price, Vicente Luque. It's a rematch, but it's an intriguing matchup. I mean, it should be a really, really fun fight. And it's interesting how much attention this fight card is getting without the big boys on it. No Conor, no John Jones, no Nurmagomedov, but it's getting, and we're pining for sports. And kudos to the UFC for figuring it out. And yes, top to bottom should be very, very entertaining.
What do you think it's going to be like for the viewers with no fans? Now, we saw the card in Brazil on March 14th, and I thought it was great. Didn't really, notice the absence of fans there. How much different do you think it'll be for the viewers, and how quickly might we get adjusted to watching these UFC cards with no fans?
I think very adjusted. I mean, for those hardcore fans, they know what it's like because you start with these regional promotions. There might be a couple hundred people in the arena watching these fights.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I think the UFC commentating crew does a great job. John Anik, Daniel Cormier, Rogan, they do a very good job of explaining what's going on in the fights. And now you get to hear a little bit more about from the coaches. Originally, obviously, those voices get drawn out by the crowd, but now you get to hear about what coaches are looking for and shouting instructions, which I think is very, very intriguing. And it's not like football or basketball or even pro wrestling where the crowd is a factor, unless you're in Brazil and they're telling you you're going to die. Right. That's the only other time. Fans are very interesting come an MMA fight.
Hey, what are you looking forward to, Jordan, coming up here on these UFC Fight Night cards, and what Dana White's going to put together in the next, let's say, 3 weeks? Any fights that are on your radar as ones you really want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously want to know what they're going to do with Conor and what they're going to do with Jorge Masvidal. I think those are the two guys that, because they can fight in multiple divisions, they're both title contenders in multiple divisions. That's what I think we're waiting for in all likelihood. I think we will get Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman for the welterweight championship, and Conor McGregor maybe against the winner of this Ferguson-Gaethje fight. But those are the two names for sure. Because John Jones, I mean, he's got his own issues, that he has to deal with before we get his name thrown back into the UFC.
Yep. Jordan Sherwood hosts the main event on ESPN West Palm. You can follow him on Twitter at Wooden1063, WOODON 1063. Great breakdown today, Jordan. Thanks for the time.
All right, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks. Good case there. Good case for a dog more than 2-1 who's 10-0 and coming off a win against Overeem. And a good breakdown, too, about why Ngannou could lose. That was excellent.
Yeah, it was. Rosenstruck, plus 225, I think, is high.
Yeah.
As high as that number at some spots. And once again, I'll remind people to pick up or download Point Spread Weekly, VSiN's digital magazine. We have breakdowns by Lou Finicaro on each of the 12 fights on this UFC 249 card. So are you guys going to buy the pay-per-view?
100%.
Come on. It's one of the best cards they've ever done. Can't wait. And they're showing all the fights, all the prelim fights on ESPN before. Good job.
Yep. Locked and loaded. Cannot wait for Saturday night. Yep. Follow the Money rolls on here on a Wednesday. Matt, Paul, Mitch, the Sports Betting Network.